What makes a person a role model? How much money they make, how nice their house is, or maybe even how admired they are by society. Well, none of this makes a role model to me. A role model to me is someone who faces hardships and perseveres, someone who cares deeply about others, and someone who takes their mistakes and learns from them. I'm sure you all can think of someone you admire. I grew up surrounded by a massive family, full of the wealthy, the smart, and the most genuine people, but none could ever compare to the solidity my brother has shown me. My brother grew up in situations no kid should have to go through. He most definitely took the road less traveled, and despite all the odds, he still came out to be one of my biggest role models. I will begin by telling you all the difficulties he has faced so far, and then I will tell you all the successes he has faced so far, or he's had so far. Let's start off with the fact he was raised by my grandparents, because at the time my mom wasn't the best fit for him. A child has every right to be raised by their parents, and being raised by grandparents can set the child up for failure sometimes due to the fact they're more lenient when it comes to punishments. He had no doubt the best life living with my grandparents, until my grandfather abruptly passed away due to a heart problem. So here we are at 8 years old. Hunter's lost 3 parents so far. He was devastated and a little depressed and couldn't understand why bad things happened to him. My grandmother was raising her grandson all on her own while dealing with the loss of the love of her life and dealing with a child who had lost the only father figure he had ever known. She typically let Hunter do whatever he wanted. He started hanging out with the wrong crowd. He would go to parties with the wrong crowd. He was smoking and drinking at underage, and he knew he wouldn't get in any trouble. He'd meet girls, bring them home for the night because he had free reign to do whatever he wanted. He had a few steady girlfriends he brought home that he met hanging with the wrong crowd, so they weren't the type of girls you want your brother to bring home. He started dating this girl named Cassie. At 21, he proposed to her when she was only 18. She hadn't graduated high school. She probably wasn't going to. Now this is where Hunter hit some of his hardest times. It only makes sense that he wants to start a family so young since he didn't have one of his own. All children want, starting at a young age, is a family and to feel like they belong somewhere. And when they don't, they create one for themselves. He ended up getting married to her, even though we begged him not to. We offered him money not to. We pleaded with him not to, but he still did it anyways. 3 months after they were married, she was pregnant. This played a huge toll on my brother because now he was the only source of income and had 2 mouths to feed. He had no trade school or college education to lean back on, and it wasn't easy for him. 1 year after their first child, she became pregnant with the second. When the youngest turns 3, Cassie decides to walk out on my brother and his family that he created. Hunter was so upset that the broken family he was born into was now the broken family that he had carried on his shoulders for the past couple years. Now let's talk about Hunter's successes. Hunter ended up at trade school and makes more than enough money to support the family that he has. He got married again to a literal angel sent from heaven. They had 1 more child. They're the happiest family I can tell you about. And they have the happiest marriage that I could only hope to have one day. They've created a beautiful life. They have a beautiful home. They just bought a brand new car. Materialistically, Hunter has everything he could ever need, and he's earned every single thing that he has. I'm so proud of my brother from going to living in a trailer park to living in a beautiful house with a beautiful girl and 3 beautiful kids. But I'm even more in awe of the strength that he shows even when he does face those kind of hardships. He's one of the most selfless and one of the kindest people I've ever met. He never once changed no matter what he faced. He always kept a smile on his face and put the people he loved first. Today I talked about my definition of a role model and even gave an example. I told you about how he was raised by by our grandparents, involved with the wrong crowd, had a child really young, and went through a terrible divorce. He stayed strong and never let it change the person he was and the person he was meant to be. John Wooden said, "Being a role model is the most powerful form of education." Too often, fathers neglect it because they get so caught up in making a living they forget to make a life. Luckily, my nieces and nephews have the best dad they could ever ask for.
Should we clap?